Good.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here. My name is Carlos Cardona. I'm the state director for Marianne Williamson, president.
Mackenzie?
But it is my pleasure to introduce to you today our first African American on the city council here in Portsmouth, our first African American assistant mayor in the state of New Hampshire. And as a Puerto Rican, I can't tell you how proud I am of these achievements. And of course, 5 years as a small business owner here at Cup of Joe, and a Granite Stater native fighting for a better New Hampshire for all of us. Please welcome Assistant Mayor Joanna Kelley.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, so much for being here. It is an honor to have you all here. As a small business owner, we at Cup of Joe are celebrating our 5th anniversary here today. So we're so excited to have survived the pandemic that we know affected so many people. But a little bit about this space for some of you who haven't been here. My goal in creating Cup of Joe was to create a fully inclusive environment for everyone, to really create a location that was a community connector. And one of the privileges I now have because of that is I'm allowed and can host wonderful people like Marianne who are really trying to make a difference fundamentally in our country. I know it's so exciting, and there's so many times that we lose this, right? We lose this connection, and we saw really during the pandemic how much we miss the face-to-face interactions. It's one of the great privileges that we have as Granite Staters that most of us have access to every single candidate running for any office because they know how important we are here. They know that our first in the nation primary is so important to us. They know that we as Granite Staters are committed to positive change in the country and really trying to lead that way. I'm so excited. I was able to meet Marianne before this, and for me, it's refreshing to hear a politician not talk like a politician. I joke all the time that I am technically a politician since I got elected. But in reality, what I view myself as and what I view Marianne as are leaders, community leaders, people that really care about everyone. I know, it's exciting. So many times we find and we see, on the local, state, federal level, the separation between our elected leaders and the people actually living day-to-day lives that are affected by the policies they create. And so what we need to bring and what we need to be as elected officials and leaders are real people. We need to remember what our day-to-day lives were like before being elected. For me, as a city councilor and assistant mayor, I still work every day. You can come in here often and see me making lattes or see me throwing fundraisers or events because I'm part of my community and I was elected to represent that. And so it's important to me when we think about this presidential election that we make sure that we are trying to elect a leader who really cares about people and the fundamentals of what that job is, which is to take care of every single American, no matter their education, their social economics, their sexuality, their gender identity. That as an American leader, that you really set the tone that trickles down. So that, and so many other reasons, I'm so excited to welcome Marianne here today and to let you all meet the woman that I've gotten to know and gotten to meet and really think about what we want for America and think about what we want for the next generations. And we have to set a tone. We have to set a course. And I'm really excited to see, Marianne's dreams and desires for what this country can be. And so I welcome you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And to hear your assistant mayor, is it assistant mayor? Is that how you
Assistant
express
mayor,
it? To hear your assistant mayor, Joanna Kelley, speak. When Joanna and I first met, there was a sense of rapport. There was a sense of resonance, that we both felt certain ways, knew certain things, had certain conviction that I know is not shared just by Joanna and me, but is shared not only by many people in this room, but I believe by millions and millions of people in America. But I think a lot of that conviction is something that many of us have felt for a long time. we could just seek to express in our own individual lives. We felt that the toxicity of politics was something that we really didn't want to be part of too much, for the very reasons that Joanna said, that so much of what we have come to think of as the political establishment was somehow out of alignment with what our hearts knew to be true. But now I think many of us, and millions of us, have come to understand that by disengaging from politics, we've only allowed it to become more toxic. And the incidents that have occurred here at this place, in this beautiful environment, this town, this streets, this neighborhood where you least expect a swastika to be on the window, obviously that's a wake-up call for all of us. When I was doing this 4 years ago, there was a different feeling in the air. And the difference that I feel in the air between now and 4 years ago, I felt when I was in South Carolina earlier this week. I think 4 years ago, many of us felt that there was a malevolent factor in the country, but that if only we defeated that one malevolent factor at the ballot box, that we could sort of go back to being an okay country. I think today we realize it's more like a cancer that has metastasized, and we have a challenge in front of us which is up there with some of the biggest challenges that have ever confronted any generation of Americans. I think that we're very tempted to almost be paralyzed emotionally. Nobody quite knows what to do. And I think that I'd like to begin my remarks today by submitting to you that it's not just what we have to do, but what we have to understand and who we have to be. I've heard it said that you can live your life one of two ways. You can either live your life out of circumstances, or you can live your life out of a vision. And we need to reclaim in our collective experience as citizens, just like we claim in our own personal lives, the vision that we want to follow and that we want to see manifest and expressed in the world around us. I think in the last few years, for some reasons that are okay and for some reasons really that aren't okay, we have become exceedingly self-referenced. A lot of times that kind of self-reference has emerged from difficult economic circumstances, and there are other reasons as well. I don't think we need to do so much in terms of analyzing how we as individually got to a certain place of disengagement, as it is that now it's time for all of us to get together because, to put it bluntly, we need to save our democracy. I do think that there is a critical mass of Americans who do know that. I noticed when I gave a talk earlier today that people recognize the complexity of this moment. It's not as simple as some politician coming in here and saying, we need to do this, 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 and this. And as soon as we do this, this, and this, everything will be okay. I think things such as swastikas on the windows of people who are either black, gay, or Jewish tells you pretty much everything you need to know about the challenges that we have in front of us. But we have to dig deep, and this will not be solved just by doing certain things, but by changes that occur within ourselves as much as within the panoply of public policies that we concern ourselves with. I do want to start with talking about the places where I do think public policy, however, helped bring us to this place, and the changes in public policy that I think will be necessary in order to help us turn the page. Over the last 50 years, 48 specifically, there has been a massive transfer of wealth to the tune of $50 trillion that has gone from 90% of Americans to 1% of Americans. I really want you to take a moment to take that in. That in over 48 years, $50 trillion has shifted. They call it, if you're being polite about it, a massive transfer of wealth. If you're being direct and blunt about it, a theft. A theft from 90% of Americans into 1%. And this has been accomplished through the economic policies, often called neoliberalism. It could be called trickle-down economics, hyper-capitalism. It's whatever you want to call it, but it's basically the idea that a corporation, instead of having to serve all of the stakeholders, who are the stakeholders in a business? It has to do with the owners of the business, but it also has to do with the workers in the business. It also has to do with the community that the business exists in. It also has to do with the environment that is affected by that business. There are many stakeholders. What happened in the 1980s, some people say it started happening in the 70s. We don't even have time for that level of in-the-weeds analysis. But it was the idea that all that a corporation owed was fiduciary or financial responsibility to the stockholders. So what that meant was that a lot of money would accrue to the people who bought stocks. Prior to the 1980s, stock buybacks were illegal. CEOs being paid with stock options was illegal. But back in the 1980s with the Reagan Revolution, no, it's like this concentration of wealth in the hands of the CEOs and the billionaire donor class and the stockholders. The idea was that this was supposed to be great for everybody. And the unbelievable canard that was created was that these stockholders would make so much money that they would create jobs. And it would be so great because then all that money would trickle down and it would lift all boats. Well, we all know, I think at this point, 40 years later, it's very clear it did not lift all boats. It left millions and millions of people without even a life vest. And so this is where you get the fact that we have 68,000 people in this country who die every year from lack of health care. The fact that you have 1 in 4 Americans living in with medical debt. $88 billion worth of medical debt. You have 18 million Americans who cannot afford to fulfill the prescriptions that their doctors give them. Why is this? Because insurance companies don't want us to have universal health care because that would cut into their profits. Now, I want you to remember, as we have this conversation, that universal health care is granted as a moderate position and as a right within every other major democracy. But because of Big Pharma, there might be people here, or if there aren't people here, there are people that you know who ration their insulin. Yeah. This does not exist in other countries. You have that have universal health care. The fact that we have the kind of implosion in our environment, the fact you have the PFAS in New Hampshire. Why is it that we have all of these incredible transgressions upon our bodies, upon our pocketbooks, upon the very state of our democracy and of our health? Because we put the short-term profit maximization of huge multinational corporations before the safety and the health and the well-being of our people. We have today what is often called a corporatocracy, which is really the notion that huge corporations in our country have become an aristocracy, that we have reverted to a state of aristocracy. They are like what the landed gentry were in Old England. But today, it's insurance companies, it's big pharmaceutical companies, it's big agricultural companies, it's big chemical companies, it's big food companies, it's gun manufacturers, and it is defense contractors of the proverbial military-industrial complex. They behave in a way that is aristocratic. It's called an oligarchy. It is the idea that the wealth that is generated, produced, and owned by the people, either of that CEO and donor class, or all of the corporations that they represent, somehow get to lord over the rest of us. They have their tentacles in every single aspect of American society. They have created a situation which is nothing short of corporate tyranny. Because of the money that these corporations and very wealthy individuals, by the way, I do want to say, this is not about nice people versus not nice people. This is about systems. We must not demonize individuals. That's not what's going on here. No socioeconomic group has a monopoly on moral values. This is not about individuals. This is about systems. Martin Luther King said we must conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must remember that. There is a human positivity that we must adhere to at the same time that we speak truth to power and call these systems on their malfeasance. The idea here, however, is that particularly because of Citizens United decision several years ago, which did allow these corporations to give an unlimited amount of money to political campaigns, because of other ways that money is now able to exert undue influence on our government, the government itself now acts as a kind of system of legalized bribery. The government should be holding those forces in their appropriate lane. The government should be regulating those forces. They have said for decades, oh, job-killing regulations, job-killing regulations. The deregulation is what's killing more than jobs, it's killing people. What they are, these are safety regulations, environmental regulations, regulations that protect workers, protect the right to unionize, and so forth. What is happening now is that government, in ways that it should be protecting us from the overreach of this kind of what is often called hyper-capitalism, instead of government protecting us and protecting our environment and protecting our communities in too many ways, and in too many cases, government is chopping the wood and carrying the water for the corporate tyrants. Now, we've been asking ourselves for many years, well, what are we going to do? Who do we have to vote for to make it okay? Is it going to be the Republicans or is it going to be the Democrats? Now, very clear here, I am a Democrat, but I grew up in a time when the Democrats were closer to the vision, still the legacy of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, where there was an unabashed, unequivocal advocacy for the working people of the United States, making sure that the overreach of capitalism would be held in appropriate bay. Now, what happened now is that the Republican Party has now been owned completely, it seems, by the forces of corporate tyranny, and the Democratic Party, in too many cases, is trying to have it both ways. So the corporate Democrats, who are mainly in power within the Democratic Party today, they see the pain that people are in, and they try to do what they can. Try to do what they can on the periphery, right? Trying to help people survive this unjust system. Americans should not have to survive an unjust system. There should not be an unjust economic system that is lording over the American people. And so the corporate democratic agenda, which includes the one that we have now, does do what it can to help people survive an unjust economic system. I'm here today to say to you, Washington is divided into two main categories. We have this terrible economic anxiety and despair that is experienced by the majority of Americans. The majority of Americans. 64% of Americans still living paycheck to paycheck in the richest country in the world. 60% of Americans who cannot absorb an unexpected $400 expenditure in the richest country in the world. The 18 million I told you who can't fulfill their prescriptions. The fact that so many Americans are living, our seniors, half of them living on $25,000 and less a year, 12 million children who are hungry, 600,000 who are homeless in the richest country in the world. So Washington is filled with two basic categories of leaders. One, a group which does not care. Another group who, for whatever reason, God knows, we've given them enough opportunities, for whatever reason, with a few brave exceptions, such as Bernie Sanders and others, do not have the moral courage or the spine to get in there and fix it. I'm here today to say to you, let me in there. I will. Now, what they would tell you is that you cannot possibly make this choice because only they, they whose careers have been entrenched in driving the car that took us into this ditch, only they should be trusted to take us out of the ditch. But the problem in Washington has plenty of political car mechanics. That's not the problem. The problem is that we are on the wrong road. And so those who say that only one of them from that political class, which God knows has had enough opportunity over the last 50 years to turn this thing around, they would say that only they should be allowed to be in any kind of serious leadership position in this system. And I say to you, my qualification is not that I know how to further effectuate or perpetuate that system. What I know how to do is disrupt that system. And the way to disrupt a field of lies is by laying down some truth. And so if you ask me, how do I do that? I'm starting here today. Can we be real and talk about what's happening in this country? That is where it all starts. You know, I come from a field. I have worked with people up close and personal for the last 40 years of my life, working with people whose lives are in trauma, whose lives are in crisis. And the conversation you must have is what's really happening here. How did you get here? Look in the mirror. How did you contribute to this? What's really going on here? And so I feel that I have a 40-year career that has trained me in some very important talents and skills involved in helping people and in helping systems both endure a time of crisis, but also transform the time of crisis. In order to do that, you have to start telling the truth. I understand about the factors we all do in this country that have no problem spewing lies, but too many times, even in my own party, people are willing to tell the truth, but they're not telling the whole truth, and they're not telling nothing but the truth, and that's what we need to get to. This country has to look in the mirror. This country has got to atone for our own mistakes. This country has got to be willing to own what it is that we need to own in order to move forward. If we do that, that will mean not just the government, not just our collective behavior, but starting with ourselves, including, and none of us should let ourselves off the hook. I have to say to you what we all know, we let it get this bad. We, the people of the United States, have been disengaged in ways that have allowed this creeping influence of basically, it's not just this corporate tyranny, but the societal dysfunction that inevitably emerges from that much human despair collectivized. When you have large groups of desperate people, it becomes a national security risk because it is a petri dish out of which all manner of societal dysfunction always occurs, whether it has to do with addiction, whether it has to do with depression, whether it has to do with suicide, or whether it has to do with ideological capture by genuinely psychotic forces, such as white supremacists, such as neo-fascists, such as some of the seriously dangerous neo-fascist authoritarian threats that are in our midst. Now, some people would say, you can't vote for Marianne Williamson because we got to beat Trump. And, excuse me, that's why I'm running. I am running because I do not believe that going to the American people in 2024 and saying, hey, the economy is doing well, is going to win in 2024 when that very message is contradictory to the visceral experience of the majority of Americans. So what I believe, and that's what, you know, it's interesting, a political campaign is a long job interview. I assume that you'll be interviewing this candidate perhaps more than once over the next few months, and that's the job of the primary states, and I'm really honored to have a chance to be part of the process. You get to know me, you get to know my consciousness, who I am as a person, and what I would do. So I want you to know what I would do. I would seek in every way possible to have this country make an economic U-turn. Not a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right, an economic U-turn. We need the things which in every other advanced democracy the citizens can take for granted. We need universal health care. We need a complete cancellation of the college loan debt so people can get on with their lives, so that we can enter into the economy with the kind of infusion of capital that people deserve. Our young people should be aided in spreading their wings and becoming all that they can be, not thwarted in their effort to get ahead in their lives. We need tuition-free colleges and tech schools. Once again, every other advanced democracy. We need free childcare. Once again, every other advanced democracy. We need paid family leave and sick pay guaranteed as in every other advanced democracy. And we need a guaranteed living wage as in every other advanced democracy. The people who tell you it can't happen say, oh, don't listen to her. You don't understand. It's complicated. And I'm here to tell you, don't listen to them. It's not complicated. It's corrupt. Hello. It's corrupt. It's correct. The only reason we don't have those things is because of the undue influence of insurance companies, of pharmaceutical companies, of the entire panoply of corporate masters that have far too much power in America today. Should people be able to make money? Absolutely. This isn't about people not being able to make money. It's good for people to make money. The problem in America today is not enough people ever get a chance to make money. Not enough people get into the club. If you live in the club in America, there's a great country. The club means the 20% of Americans for whom the economy is basically okay. The problem is that 20% live on this enchanted economic island that is surrounded by a vast sea of economic despair. Out of that, that's where your danger comes from, is that vast sea of economic despair. That's where the danger to people's bodies, that's the danger to people's souls, that's the danger to people's mental health, etc. I've been saying to politicians forever who've come to me and asked me if I have any ideas about what we should do about the mental health crisis. I can't tell you how many politicians to whom I've responded, why don't you try to maybe not drive everybody crazy all the time? That might help. And so I believe, as Franklin Delano Roosevelt said, that we need more than the alleviation of stress. We need fundamental economic reform, but we must do that very carefully. We must have a just transition from a dirty economy to a clean economy, a just transition from a war economy to a peace economy, a just transition from dirty energy to clean energy. What does that mean? That means you have to take care of people. You have to make sure that people don't fall through the cracks. You have to make sure that people whose livelihood depends on working for industries that represent the old order don't just fall away, but they too have a place. This needs to be done carefully. But it's like everything else in life. When it's time for certain changes to be made, your only choice is between making it wisely and carefully or having certain changes thrust upon you. I can't imagine that anybody living in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and seeing swastikas on the window of a coffee shop owned by an African American. No one can any longer deny that we have problems that run deeper than we have even allowed ourselves in circumstances to look to. But I remind you that this country responded to slavery with abolition. Generation rose up and did that. This country responded to the institutionalized suppression of women with the women's suffragist movement. A generation rose up and did that. This country responded to segregation with the civil rights movement. A generation rose up and did that. And I must say, if you actually take a look at American history, what we're dealing with is no different than what those generations were dealing with. The forces within our country that have been here in every single generation that have said, forget all this, all men are created equal thing. Forget all this, government is here to guarantee life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for everyone. Forget all that. We, usually they, for their own economic purposes, are not interested in seeing those principles actualized and have proven in many violent ways that they will do whatever it takes to make sure they are not. Our ancestors rose up and said enough is enough. And those ancestors who rose up and said enough is enough, by the way, many of them when it comes to slavery from New Hampshire, from the earliest evangelical churches in New Hampshire, from senators and political leaders in New Hampshire. That's quite a tradition you have here. They did not necessarily emerge from the political parties, they emerged from the people, and then the political parties became the conduits. It is simply our turn. This entire story, this iteration, this struggle between these enlightened principles of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness versus those forces which would diminish and suppress them. It is simply our turn. It is our turn now. And in order for us to live in honor of our ancestors and in true devotion to our children and to our descendants, it is time for us to do what other generations have done before us. It is unacceptable what is happening. It is intolerable what is happening. We've had enough with what is happening. We the people, we have the power. We're getting in there. This stuff needs to stop. And let's do it with love. Let's do it with justice, and let's do it with love. But I'll tell you something. Joanna was telling me that when the swastikas were painted on the buildings and on the businesses that represented, whether it was gay, Jewish, black, whatever it is that the white supremacists hate, that this country, this city, you said, responded with flowers. And that's so important, the response. At a time when hatred is so loud, love cannot afford to whisper. Send in a woman with love, and I promise you, I will not whisper. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I so look forward to answering any questions that you have. People ask and make comments, and we'll talk about the greater specifics to whatever extent you would like. Is that right? Can we do that?
Yes.
Okay. So please let me know if you have any questions or any comments that you would like to make.
I got a question.
Yes.
So, as someone who grew up in New Hampshire and a creative, I felt like there definitely wasn't enough here, and I feel like so many of my friends are left here with nothing. Like you said, we're working 3 jobs, but none of them are the jobs that we want to work. And when we see an economy moving towards, like my son said earlier, these AIs, how are we going to shift and put in places where if that comes in place, we're going to live our dreams and still bring in capital to feed our families?
What we need is a 21st century economic bill of rights. You know, in both the lives of Abraham Lincoln and the life of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, both of those men were, at the time of their deaths, busy at work with planning what was going to happen, quote unquote, once the war was over. And President Roosevelt had asked the American people, what do you want? They said, we want free health care. They said, we want education for all. They said that they wanted these things that now constitute the great unfinished work that still remains before us. When you have a guaranteed living wage, what does that mean? What does an economic bill of rights mean? It means that everyone who wants to work should be able to work. This is one of the core principles of the Green New Deal. What the Green New Deal says is that there is an extraordinary amount of work that will be available when we initiate the season of repair, the new beginning in this country. As we cut the cord with the aberrational chapter of American history that is represented by neoliberalism or trickle-down economics, we will have, there are millions of jobs that will be created when we get about the work, not just serving the economic bottom line of huge corporations, but the humanitarian bottom lines involved with repairing our country. There are millions of jobs. Now, this is exactly what the forces of the extreme right wing don't want. They don't like the idea of the government being involved in job creation. That is what Franklin Delano Roosevelt did. That is what would happen and will happen with the Green New Deal. But once again, it is we the people. And once again, I remind you, this is New Hampshire. If a new conversation, and I felt the same way when I was in South Carolina, these 2 states, there's a lot of stuff going on with these 2 states about what's happening, but with the Democratic primary schedule, but the states themselves are not in competition with each other. One of the things that you share in New Hampshire and South Carolina is you, and I mean you literally. You literally will determine what conversation dominates this presidential cycle and what a conversation then dominates the next period of our chapter. So for you to say, oh, we've heard all that nonsense about socialism and all the things that are supposed to scare us, you're not supposed to die for capitalism, okay? You're not supposed to, that's not what's supposed to happen. Capitalism has lost its ethical center, and it must be reclaimed. Adam Smith, who was the primary architect of free market capitalism, said it cannot exist outside an ethical center. You know, you had the CEO of Norfolk Southern actually testifying before Congress today about the unwillingness of the company to take care of all of the medical bills of all of the people whose health it is reasonable to assume will be harmed by what happened in that train derailment. So we simply put this country back to work. And that can happen when you unleash the true spirit and allow there to be the kind of positive public-private partnerships that are possible. Yeah. By the way, but they would say, oh no, unemployment's so down. But we must remember, yes, it's a very good thing that unemployment is down. But much of those jobs, first of all, many of those jobs are jobs that came back after the pandemic. Many of those jobs do not pay a living wage. We have 1/3 of Americans who live on less than $15 an hour and can't find a place to live. So there's more to those numbers around low unemployment. Number one, how many of them pay a minimum wage, and even the minimum wage, as we know, is not nearly enough. And also, how many of those jobs are jobs that people cannot live on. They have to live on 2 or 3 in order to survive. Yes, sir.
Hi. I work for Starbucks, and one of the things going on in the company right now, you have 2 things. One, a large, unprecedented union busting campaign, which is affecting the lives of millions of people trying to stand up for their rights. A lot of baristas just want a living wage. We want, better benefits. We want health care. We want the ability to enhance the culture of Starbucks. And unfortunately, we're seeing this corporate washing, hour-cutting system that's preventing a lot of people from getting the hours they need to survive, from getting the wages they need to survive. And a lot of people are losing their jobs. They're losing their homes. They're scared to speak up for those of us who do want rights. So how can we progress as a nation, not just Starbucks, but as a nation, in order to ensure those who wish to unionize may unionize, and those who wish to have a living wage may have a living wage, and those people don't have to live in fear of losing their jobs, of not paying the bills, of not losing their homes, of not losing their health insurance.
So when this entire thing started about 40, 50 years ago, one of the ways that this transfer of wealth was created was by demonizing and suppressing unions. And so what's happening now is this resurgence of people such as this young man who are recognizing the importance of unions in order to protect the rights of the average American. Now, what's happening is that we have a class and a culture of union busters, and Howard Schultz at Amazon is a particular example of the Gilded Age characters who is engaging in union busting as we speak. How great is Bernie Sanders in saying we need to subpoena this guy and have him speak before Congress?
129!
Okay. But to be honest, you need a president, not just someone in the Senate. You need a president who's saying, Howard Schultz, we're coming after you. You're not going to get to union bust like that. Okay. We need a president who's going to say, Jeff Bezos, we're not going to allow union busters like you to do what you do. And one of the first things I would do as president is cancel all government contracts with union busters. And this president has said that this government would not have contracts with union busting companies. Look at the government contracts with Amazon and so forth. I don't know how you have a Democratic president, much less a president who said he's so pro-labor, that is actually siding with the railroad companies against the interests of the railroad workers who want nothing more than sick pay. Right. This is obscene. And so it's so important. It is inspiring, first of all, particularly to see the young people, Christian Smalls, to see Sarah Nelson, to see Max Alvarez, to see all those people who do represent this new generation of unions. You know, when I was a kid, my parents always told us, if you ever cross a picket line, don't bother to come home. But I have been amazed over the last few years at some of my friends. I remember several years ago, it was probably a couple decades ago, we went somewhere and there was a picket line, and I said to the woman who was with me, we were in a car, I remember I said, oh, we can't go there, there's a picket line. And she said, oh, that's okay, we can just sort of go around it. I was like, whoa. Whoa, and that was my first exposure to the fact that it was no longer in common parlance that you must respect it. Now, I want to remind you also that in the 1970s, the average worker did have decent benefits. In the 1970s, the average worker could afford a home, could afford a car, could afford to take a yearly vacation, and could afford to send their kids to college. That was in the 1970s. So the diminishment of the power of unions is one of the factors involved in the fact that the average working American no longer has the life and the lifestyle and the ability to spread their wings the way generations before us did. So in me, you would have a president who said, Howard Schultz, why don't you come over to the Oval Office? Maybe we could talk for a few minutes. And the American people would know that. You know, one of the things, I don't think he'd take me up on my offer, by the way, but he would know, and I would use the bully pulpit to make sure. What you need is more people, such as what Bernie Sanders is doing, saying he is willing to subpoena. But I'll tell you something, you need a president who will say, I want Congress to subpoena the CEOs of not only the union-busting companies, but every company that is now price gouging the American people. That has to do with big food, that has to do with the food companies, the inflation, the fact that people can't buy food. This has to do with the food companies, the meat packing, the agricultural companies, the airlines, and all of them. It's time to stop pussyfooting around with this. And by the way, many of these people know what they're doing and are kind of surprised they haven't been called out before now. And by the way, as I was saying to a gentleman on a plane the other day, very nice man actually, was making it clear to me, you know, he clearly was a master of the universe type. He was a really nice guy. I could also tell that he was very involved in his city. I don't know how he votes, but he certainly was a concerned American and understands what's really going on. I said to him, I was talking about a wealth tax. I was talking about people at the highest ends of our income ladder paying fair share of their taxes. You know, in 2017, under President Trump, they passed a $2 trillion tax cut, and 83 cents of every dollar went to the top earners and the richest corporations. What was good about that, and they were very smart, because they also put a middle-class tax cut in there. So we need to repeal that, but we need to put back in the middle-class tax cut. We need to have a wealth tax where people over $50 million in assets do pay an additional 2%. People of $1 billion in asset pay additional 1%. But one of the things that happened in my conversation with that gentleman was I looked at him and I said, can we be honest? You wouldn't even feel it. It would never affect your day. And he said, you're right. That's what's so hideous about this. That is what is so wrong about this. We are talking about people for whom a fair tax burden would not even affect their lives in the slightest, whereas those shifts, whether it has to do with taxes or the end of corporate subsidies or anything else, would literally make the difference between whether or not somebody could live a life unshackled by the invisible economic chains that are held around far too many people. So, congratulations to you, sir, and I hope, I'm sure, I assume I speak for everybody in this room for saying go Starbucks, go with this new wave of unionization going on in this country, and people are watching, and you're doing a beautiful job, and I wish you the best. I do know, something you said, it's a war of attrition, and Schultz is making it very difficult. I hope Bernie is able to get him to speak before Congress, and I hope he is held into account. This is pure union busting, and theoretically it is illegal. Who's next? Anybody? Did somebody say you had something to say over there? So what do you think, everybody? You think I should run for president?
Yeah.
Thank you. I will say this. Obviously, the institutional power is with that other guy, that very nice man. I have no interest in any kind of personal pot shots at the president. But his candidacy is, first of all, I hope he will come here, and I hope he will debate me, and I hope that you, the citizens of New Hampshire, will make sure that he gets that message. I'm not naive. I've done this before. I didn't enter into this thinking that it would be easy. I didn't enter into it not expecting the kind of smear tactics that are already being thrown at me. It is, to a certain extent, like running into a burning building, but you, the people who might see things the way I do, are my fire retardant. And I am requesting your support. If you feel that my voice is an element that should be present, and particularly if you feel that the kind of ideas that I represent actually should make their way into the White House, I ask that you will support me. This is a kind of insurgent campaign in that sense, correct? Because there's no way we're ever going to have the kind of institutional power that is represented by the corporatist machine. But what we have is a feeling of passion in our hearts. It's the same passion that our ancestors felt. There's this kind of fire that burns blazing in the hearts of those of us who feel that the very idea of a country in which everybody, if they work hard enough, should have a shot, that blazes inside us, and we are willing to conduct that struggle on that high plane of dignity and discipline. If that's the truth, I sure hope you'll help me. I sure hope, and I'm going to introduce you in a moment to my to my state director, Carlos Cardona. He will ask for your email. He will ask if if it's comfortable for you for your donations. He will ask you to get on social media, tell your friends about where I'm going to be this week to help build this campaign so that it cannot be invisibilized. It cannot be just, in a patronizing, condescending, paternalistic way, made to appear like we need to sit down because the grown-ups are in charge. The grown-ups are in charge. Are you kidding me? We are 6 inches from the cliff. And these grown-ups, among other things, a grown-up does not knowingly allow a child to go hungry. Like I said, let me in that house and you're going to see some changes, and I believe with all my heart you would like them. Yes. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I hope you're just as fired up as I am today. We've had a great day here in New Hampshire. A lot of support, a lot of love, and that's exactly what I like to see first in the nation. Again, thank you. My name is Carlos Cardona. I will be here for whatever you need. I want to contact. I want to make sure that we connect and that we build this campaign from the ground up and make it the movement that we need here in New Hampshire. What I need you all to do is do me a quick favor. Pull out your phones, please. I'll give you a few minutes or seconds.
Thank you.
I want to see those phones. Thank you. Please go to Marianne2024.com. To put your information, link is going to pop up. Just make sure you put your name, last name. I know I've talked to some of you and we've already done that, but please make sure you're in there because we're going to send you an email tonight with a list of all the places we're going to be for the next couple of days. And I want you to, tomorrow or the next day, come to one of our events. Bring a friend or a relative with you and share the message that Marianne has for all of us. And then last but not least, donate $1, $2, $3, $50, $100, whatever you can give. We really need your support to make sure that we have a strong campaign here in New Hampshire and that we make sure that we show that we're behind Marianne Williamson. Thank you so much for everything you're doing in your communities. I know you're all involved, and I will be here to connect with all of you. Make sure you take a picture with Marianne, share it on social media, and share why you believe that Marianne not only should win the state of New Hampshire, but also be the next president of the United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that okay? Anything I said I shouldn't have said, or anything you think I should say that
I was glad the young man talked about Starbucks. It's funny when I guess people listen. When you were talking about Starbucks, I looked over at my staff because we do a guaranteed wage of $20 an hour. We have health care that we pay 80% for. We have sick paid, we have vacation time, we have paternal leave, we have maternal leave. So all of these things I get goosebumps because as a small business owner, I make a sacrifice so that my staff can have a livable life. And it is a shame to me when we do not. I get infuriated when I drive past a Whole Foods and see them proudly advertising for $15 an hour. Like that is a proud statement. That one of the wealthiest companies in the world still do not find it in them to pay a livable wage. And more so, break down the people that bust their butts every single day. I'm able to do politics, do my advocacy work, run my other businesses because I have a staff that I treat well and they treat me well in return. And that should be the baseline for every company.
I hope you send this lady, you're very fortunate to have her here in Portsmouth, but I have a feeling she has a career that goes way, way beyond just Portsmouth. And I'm glad that I was here to see her.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
We'll be
everyone,
here.
so much.
Make sure you
Thank
come
you.
over, say hello. President, Vice President.
Can somebody take our picture?
Yeah, I'll take it.
Oh, oh, you sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And then I would like you to get in the picture too.
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, how did I do? What did you think? Am I right? Am I correct?
Amazing.
Do you
Amazing.
think?
Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
Did I come across to anything? No, I mean it. You can help me by giving me
You're no
feedback.
BS. I appreciate it. You're no BS.
Yeah. Is it a little too much that I soften my approach a little bit?
Go harder. Harder.
I think so. Can we just have a real conversation here? And I think people are ready for that. That's my sense. But thank you.
Yeah, there's two things that I want to talk about from earlier.
Okay.
There's an issue I think that keeps coming up about the vaccine.
Yeah.
And I think I was thinking about that a lot since that conversation. And it's a bit of a new science. It's experimental, and to have that forced upon us is scary. So I think it comes into a liberty perspective where we have to be smart about the science behind it. But
What do you feel about situations where they say, well, you have to have the vaccine or get tested?
well, I think if you have the vaccine, why are you scared of what other people are doing? You have the vaccine. So if another person doesn't have the vaccine, why do you care?
I don't know about that. I don't
either, but
you know what? Here's how I feel about that. There are people very passionate, making very good arguments on both sides of that one. You know?
because we had the urge to eradicate polio off the roads again, right? And we did that for the most part by mandating people get these vaccines, and it pretty much did eradicate. And I think we do have the urge, especially as Democrats or progressives, to make sure that people aren't harmed and making bad decisions because of bad information and dying because they're following, rumors off the cliff. So there is this urge to make sure that people are safe and to get your vaccinations, get your testing, stuff like that. I mean, I was triple vaxxed. I have to provide, get tested and stuff like that. But I do think there's a question of liberty, and at what extent do we say...
You're right. There is certainly not an easy...
Which goes into our bodies, our genders, the way we dress, what we want to do with our lives. And I'm sick of the government telling me I have to do this in order to function in my society. I want to be able to make sure that we have regulations in place in order to make sure that public safety is in order. We shouldn't just scoff over science and make sure and let public safety run out of hand. But at the same time, where's the line between my personal
liberty?
liberty?
I think the best people among us are trying to find is where's that line.
And you, especially. So thank you for...
I
Thank
have
you.
a request for you.
Pardon?
Oh, I just have a request.
Yeah.
It's not an if, it's a when. When you do gun safety. So I grew up with guns. I think it's important, and I live in Massachusetts, so of course we have pretty good laws. Talk to people who legally own and are in that community who are willing to speak with you, because I'm sure there are some who are, to make laws that do support people who legally own, because I completely agree with what you say in terms of, I think a federal licensing requirement would be amazing. Hopefully it's reasonable to do.
I
don't think it would do anything for now.
Even because they feel that it could be used against them. So many of these things can be not always easily.
No, it won't be, but I
and
think
if
it's
you
an
have
important...
ideas of people I should talk to, listen, the Bill of Rights does give us the right to bear arms.
But what about the Parkland kids?
Pardon?
The Parkland kids.
Oh, absolutely. No, I think there should be a ban on AK-47, but I don't think that's what this woman is arguing against.
No, it's
I think a federal license.
federal licensing that mirrors at least the reasonable parts of Massachusetts.
We have
I think would be
licensing of
great.
cars.
Exactly.
Where are you at with that now on gun regulation?
Well, exactly what this woman is saying. You have a right to drive a car, but you have to drive a car safely, and society has a right to guarantee that you will drive safely. And so I see the same thing with guns. You have a right to use them, but we have a right to guarantee safety. And when it comes to the safety of our children,
Thank you, Marianne.
congressional campaign in LA.
You what?
I worked on your congressional campaign in LA, Sarah. I know there was so many people, but I just found the photo of the party with Steven Tyler in Malibu, Comer. And that house party you did in Malibu, and then like the flyers from the Topanga stuff, and I was like, it was such a positive experience, and the people I met and made friends with during that time, like we're still friends, so I just have really good memories of working with you and for you, and excited to see you doing this again, and just amazing. Yeah.
So do you live here now?
Yeah, so I'm back in Manchester. I was in LA for 13 years, and my cousin is actually John Favreau, who does Pod Save America and stuff. So he was the one that like pulled me into the party.
I remember, and we went to a place in Venice.
Yeah.
And you told me that.
Yes, yeah. So there you go.
Now, I was interviewed for Pod Save America.
Yeah.
And are you in touch with him?
I mean, yeah, but not like super close.
Yeah.
But,
Well,
yeah.
tell him that I'd like to be on Pod Save America again.
Yes, I know. Put a little bug in his
Yeah,
ear.
thank you.
Yes, good to see
I'm
you.
happy for you.
Yes, you too.
It's probably an easier place to live.
Yes, yeah. It's nice. It's beautiful.
What kind of
here.
work do you
So
do?
I'm doing cacao ceremonies, moon circles, all of the LA stuff over here now. So I know you appreciate it, right? All right.
I volunteered for you in 2019. My name's Tom.
Are you ready to do it again?
I'm ready to do it again. I did your mornings with Marianne in 2021 also.
What?
So I did your mornings with Marianne in 2021 also.
What is your name?
My name's Tom Wigglesworth. Yeah.
Well, I want to introduce you. I don't know
Do you mind if we do a quick picture? I just got one with you before. I want to do another one.
Great,
Is that
let's
cool?
do it.
Thank you.
Did you sign up to volunteer?
Of course. I also emailed, but nobody answered me. They will. They will.
Thank you.
Oh, it's all blurry. Thank you so
Who
much.
did you send an email to?
Well, when I signed up to come to this and there's a little ticket thing, I just emailed and I was like, you guys still looking for volunteers? Because I volunteered with Barbara Holbrook and a bunch of people from Concord last time.
Okay,
So.
okay. Well, please go back to the volunteer hub
Yeah.
and on the website.
Thank you. My name's Tom Wigglesworth. I think there's some guys over here that want to say hi though.
Okay, great.
Hello, hi. I'm sorry.
What is your name?
I'm sorry, Griffin. I used to work in the New Hampshire State Senate for 5 years. So seeing you there in the chamber today, pretty awesome.
it was
for sure.
fun,
yeah.
wasn't it?
Oh yeah, but I mean, I don't think we've ever traditionally had candidates stop by like that before. You being the first, especially with the changes in the New Hampshire primary, huge deal. I thought it was great. It was very
Thank
good.
you. It was fun.
Was it good there? How long were you there for?
Probably half an hour. I spoke, I think, for 6.5 minutes or something.
Yeah, because I think they were voting today or something like that. So,
well, they told me I
yeah.
could have 10 minutes, but I didn't have a watch on. Somebody said you could.
No, that's awesome. That's great. No, we appreciate coming here to the event. It's really great to obviously meet the candidates who come here for the primary. And
Thank
everything.
you.
So this is my brother Egan. Nice to meet you. Yeah.
So what do you think? Do you agree with what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I thought it was very good for sure. I know, was it me personally? I'm still, a little bit more undecided. He, I think, is definitely more, I think receptive to your discussion points. I'm just undecided, just kind of shopping around
It's
listening.
the very
Yeah.
beginning of the process.
Absolutely.
And I'm just honored that you'll give me a listen, and we'll hopefully.
Again, you were the first candidate out here, and you were close to home, so it's like, I'm going to swing by for sure and
Technically,
learn.
the only person who's.
No, is it possible?
I think I won New Hampshire.
I'm sorry, is it possible to grab a photo with you?
Not at all. Let's do it.
Could someone take a photo? Sorry. There we go. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'll scoot it. I appreciate it.
1, 2, and
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Marianne Williamson. How are you?
Nice to meet you.
I don't live in New Hampshire, I live in Florida, but I was in Boston and I followed you spiritually for years, so I said, get up there because I really believe Gabrielle Bernstein, yeah, she's a really good friend of mine. She took me to and she was staying with me in Aspen 12 years ago. It changed my life, but I really am very happy about what you're doing. I went to Harvard Business School and I retired during the, so I think I could help, so I gave him all my info because I have a lot of time and I know how the other side works.
Great, thank you.
But I believe in what you're doing, really.
And what is your name again?
Meredith.
Meredith. Thank you.
Yeah, I really mean it. And someone who follows you spiritually is like, this is what you have to do.
This is good,
I mean,
thank you.
for every vote you get, but also just to change the perspective. And I love that now you're taking the economic, because that's what really matters. You can't wonder who you're voting for if you can't pay your mortgage. I mean, you just can't. You're going to worry 24/7 but that really wears on your brain. So I love that you're doing it this way, and I've got a lot of time.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let me take a picture, and then we'll. Someone take a picture.
Sure.
Just don't give up. Just keep blow drying your hair and saying the right thing and speaking fast and being smart, because we are listening. It does make a difference. Sure. Thank you.
Did I come across friendly enough?
Yes, you did. With a little friendly and really smart. That's really important, because first people, as a woman, they're just going to look at us. So I love that you still make the effort and you don't say this doesn't matter. But the only thing I'd say is when you make the little mistakes, like, Amazon, J-Weez, and whatever, and people correct you, say thank you. You make them feel smart, you make them feel involved. That's the only thing I do. You were great at ignoring the little child who was stealing all the attention. But you're doing everything right. Just don't quit. That's the hard thing. It's easy now at the beginning, but 6 months from now, when you're like, I'm so tired, I want to visit my daughter, just don't. What you're doing is so
I'll remember that you said that. And your name is Meredith.
Meredith, yeah, I gave her my card. Thank you so much. Keep it up. Thank you. Can I take a photo?
Yes. And David, take my picture. I know. Thank you. But I told this lady I'll take a picture for you. Okay? Is that what we do?
Oh, you're joining today? Come on.
I like it. I'm taking the camera.
Ready? One.
Thank you. Thank you. That's because I'm married to her.
How long have you been married?
Just since November, but we've been together for 12 years. Yeah.
You have children?
Yeah.
You hope to, yeah. Just a matter of time.
My daughter's pregnant. We'll have my first grandchild.
Oh my God.
How old are you?
I'm 28, 27.
Yeah,
I'm
27.
27. Can't even keep track of my age.
Well, you have time. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm
What's
so
your
good.
name?
My name is Nathan.
Nice
So
to meet
nice to meet you. I have to let you know, as a young person and a member of Gen Z, like, you really are inspiring for a lot of us.
Thank you.
And it's not a matter of if Gen Z gets on board, it's when we get on board, and we are aware of your message and what you have to offer. Like, I really think.
Thank you.
Like,
Thank you. I do need you. If it is to happen, it will happen because of you.
and I will say, whoever is running your TikTok account is, or because I saw that, I was like, that's super smart. Because that's like, almost everyone at least in my age group has TikTok.
For sure, yeah.
So I'm like hopeful that's like gonna help. But I'm just so excited.
I have a lot of ambivalence about it, of course, because you're just downloading information to the Chinese Communist Party.
Right.
So it's not without its cringe, but it is where people are communicating.
Yeah.
Right. But you might sometimes say, hi.
I know.
I know.
Yeah.
I understand that. I do. Would you mind if we could get a photo with you? Like a selfie, please,
Of course.
He'll be on the Getty
Have one
Flyer.
back for a picture. That'd be perfect. Thank you so much. See you there. Yeah. Do you want to get one? Yeah. Do you want to stand for it?
Okay.
That'll work. No problem. That's perfect. Thank you so much. It was so nice to meet you. Thank you so much.
I hope this is David with the campaign.
Nice to meet you. How are you?
You know, they're talking about Gen Z. And we'll have a youth director soon. Are you in school here?
Yeah, well, I am. I'm sitting the exchange here in New Hampshire, but I'm from Kentucky, actually. So,
I love Louisville.
I am from the E-Town area, so I'm not E-Town Fort Knox area, so I'm not far from that.
Wow, and you're in school here?
Yes, I'm spending an exchange year up here, but my main school is back home in Kentucky.
What university?
Western Kentucky University in Bowling Green.
Here, where
Oh, the University of New Hampshire.
Well, we've heard that more than once today, so we need to get over.
Oh, really?
We're going to be.
Is that where you are?
I go there too. Yeah.
Okay.
Which is really cool.
We got to get over there.
Perfect, awesme. Thank you all so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care. Best of luck. Best of luck.
So much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Very much.
Nice to meet you. I wasn't with the paper here in 2020, so I didn't get to cover any of the appearances of you all. And you kind of touched on a few of these points anyways, but so since bowing out of the race in 2020, what have you learned and what is different this time around?
Exactly. This is the upper people seem more aware of the complexity of our problem. In 2020, Democrats at least just wanted someone to defeat Donald Trump. And those of us who did not support that president were hoping that once his administration was over, we would go back to some level of normalcy. People realize now that the problem is going deeper than one president. And that there is a division, a hatred plaguing our nation that does not submit itself to easy, simplistic answers. That right there is the kind of maturation of the American culture. I hope for a long time that when it comes to individual personal relationships, Americans go as deep as anybody does. But when it comes to our collective political conversations, we've been trained into this kind of sophomore thinking, simplistic thinking, either-or thinking, black and white thinking, immature thinking. And I sense that Americans are ready to go deeper. There's a transactional politics that is very from the neck up. It treats symptoms, but it doesn't even ask itself about cause. And I sense a realization on the part of what I hope is a critical mass of Americans that the way we approach problems in the late 20th century is not an adequate problem-solving modality for the challenges that we face now. That's good news about the bad news. That's what I think.
Do you think anybody else is going to jump in the race with you?
It's going to be interesting. I mean, I hear talk about Bobby Kennedy Jr. Listen, this is a democracy. And the problem I have is with the voices who say people shouldn't jump in, not with the voices that might jump in. Americans, particularly at a time like this, should have as wide array of options as possible.
How would you sum up President Biden's first term? How would you sum up President Biden's first term so far?
A nice man who in some ways is a nice man who is trying to help people survive within an unjust economic system. We need more than that, however, because it's an incremental approach to a massive problem. We need to end that unjust system. We need to end an aberrational chapter of American history. I do not believe that the agenda of the president, which does include incremental changes and does include the message that the economy is doing well, I do not believe that that's the winning message for 2024.
How would you get it done?
Well, first of all, obviously it matters what constitutes your House and your Senate. There's no doubt about that. But the president still gets to make executive orders. The president still gets to appoint who heads agencies, and the president has that microphone on the public pulpit, and that is not a small thing. President Biden has said that he would veto a Medicare for All bill if it came to his desk. I would sign a Medicare for All bill, and I would do everything in my power in order to effectuate universal health care. The president had promised working on the $15 an hour minimum wage beyond just federal workers, but then was willing to basically hide behind the skirts of the parliamentarian when the parliamentarian had a problem with it. And I remind you that the parliamentarian has no real authority there. When the Democratic Party did pass, when Congress did pass a child tax credit that cut child poverty in half, when that expired, there was no effort made to permanentize it. The president has said that climate change is an existential crisis. On the other hand, he has given more oil drilling permits than even Trump did, and the Biden administration is now okaying a scaled down version of the infrastructure of oil extraction infrastructure plan in Alaska. We have to make that.
I have to leave. I just want to say goodbye. I don't apologize for interrupting you. I'll see you soon. I'll talk soon. Thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
There are many things the president could schedule marijuana from a Schedule 1, declassifying marijuana from a Schedule 1 drug. The president, the effort should be not just on shaving off some of the college loan debt, but all of the college loan debt. The president could be talking about repealing the 2017 tax cut, adding back in the middle class tax cut. I would want to see audited. I would want to audit every single cent at the Pentagon. I would want to sway Congress to have every single CEO of every single price gouging company out there to speak. I would certainly not be siding with the railroads against their own workers. I agree with Franklin Roosevelt, who said he had become convinced we must become fairly radical for a generation. But that radicalism is simply the radicalism of the Declaration of Independence, simply the radicalism of the American ideal. Lincoln said we were to be a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And he said that the man who died at Gettysburg died so that the government of the people, by the people, and for the people would not perish from the earth. But it's perishing now. We are a government of the corporations, by the corporations, and for the corporations. That has not changed under the Biden administration, and it won't change under the Biden administration. And there won't be any serious fundamental economic change away from short-term profit maximization for huge corporations as our governing principle and bottom line. We need to change that to the humanitarian principle to be our bottom line. The safety, health, and well-being of the American people should be our bottom line, and we need a president who will say that loud and clear.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's really nice talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's good to see you. Thank you. I'll be in touch.
Thank you. So nice to meet you.
Marianne, how you doing? New York. All out.
I've been here before, but all you do. Did y'all enjoy?
Oh, very much.
Did it feel right to you?
Feels so good.
All feedback is appreciated. Did I come across too angry or anything?
No,
You just it worked out well.
it was very inspiring. And, really,
Thank you.
we'll probably go to another one this week.
Oh, thank you. I will see you again, and over the next few months.
We're hoping to get you to speak at our church again.
Oh, right. You talked to David or hello?
We're working out.
Hey, so great to see you. I'm Matt. Great to see you. I just saw you concert at that big speech you gave
No problem.
and kind of gave like some historical, like sort of, Tommy, it was the last raid and everyone. I think New Yorker did a thing on it too, so it was awesome.
Very nice to meet you.
Yeah, I was in the Bernie camp. I wanted to say Carlos, and then I was working up Bernie. It's like Joyer in New Hampshire. Carlos is awesome. He's just the best. So he's like 2 years. He said that, but I mean, it's like he's really, we're getting you really well.
Church tour maybe in the summer.
So now I'm an attorney here. Yeah, and I live in Portsmouth. I was Bernie's lawyer in New Hampshire, but also just a volunteer for his campaign. He was a big Bernie guy. So and I love AOC too. Matt Saldana. Yeah. So now I'm just like a local Portsmouth, and 3 boys here in public school, and so I'm really excited that you're running with some really great issues.
Do you think I can win New Hampshire?
Yeah. People like to buck the trends, so yeah. You're in the right time. Yeah. It's great to see you.
Bridget and
Matt. Yeah. So good to see you, Marianne. Thank you.
Thank you. You've been with me for a good chunk of my life. I thank you for the books you've written.
We've all grown up together.
Yeah, you're amazing, and I'm looking forward to you proving the naysayers wrong. Your message is beautiful, and
I wish you'd do more podcasts. I know you. I wish you'd do more podcasts.
I'd love to do more podcasts. If you have a podcast you think I ought to do, I hope you'll tell
Oh my
us.
God, I love listening to them. You go with me for walks on the beach.
Oh, you mean the podcast
Oh, yeah.
that I interview people?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, it was, I had a book to write.
Yeah.
I just couldn't do that podcast that really good.
Yeah. But I'm looking forward to your journey and following you. I'm in healthcare. I'm a hospice nurse. Yeah. And
Here
your
in New
message.
Hampshire?
Yeah, I work with the company in New Hampshire.
What is your name again?
Julie.
Julie?
Yeah, Julie.
I hope I will see you.
Yeah.
I hope this will be a journey that we're all on together for the next few months.
absolutely.
This is just the very beginning.
No.
I appreciate it. I need
I saw
companions
you-
on the marathon.
I saw you on Crystal and Saga, and I'm like, you go, girl.
Crystal and Kyle Kalinsky. This would not be happening without them.
Yeah.
They are such friends, such... I can't
Yeah.
love them. And I'm an officiate at their wedding.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see the people that are drawn to you and help you along the way.
Well, I need the support, obviously, and I need the vocal support. I need
Yeah.
people who are willing to put it on their social media. I need people who are willing to, they're coming out with the smears, and I need people to say that's not a shear.
Yeah. Well, they've never read your books.
There's a term in AA, contempt prior to investigation. What you're saying is so true. They've never read my books, and I love how all of a sudden everyone is self-love. I'm no longer an author. It's diminishing.
Yeah. Well, right now we need to practice patience, tolerance, kindness, and love.
Well, I hope you felt enough of that coming from me.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah, you're a good woman.
I hope I will see you again.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, Marianne. Candy McDan. I met you last time we were running out of the office with my husband Greg Elliott.
So we're doing this again.
We did it again, and we're thrilled you're doing it again. He couldn't come tonight because he has parent night. His teacher, but you had promised him to come to his classroom if you want. He's hoping you will do that again if he wins. We're down in Massachusetts though.
Oh, okay.
So I told Carlos, I gave him my information if there's anything we could do in Massachusetts.
Okay.
I know New Hampshire's
Absolutely. So what grade does he teach?
high school.
So there were these little kids at the state capitol today. It was so cute. Look at this hand. It was so cute. I told these little ones, I said, if I win, we're going to have a children's council. And I need you to be on the children's council, and you will say what you want for the world. And then one of them told his mother the other day, I'm going to be on Marianne's children's council. And then I told this little girl, I said, now, Maverick is the founding member. And she said to me, we can co-chair. She's 7 years old. We can co-chair.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I'm thrilled. I do the lessons with you every week too, so I know. And that's one of the things I just know that you would be bringing a little bit of that inspiration to reality. Yes. So anything I can do, I've signed up, and I'm so thrilled. So good luck with everything. Okay. Good to see you. God bless you.
Will you put it on your social media?
I want to, yes.
Oh, I'll do that too.
It was so nice to meet you. Definitely.
I'll do social
reading your
media.
books.
Thank you. I'll do a social media.
New friend.
I'm not real good at this. I have to turn it back.
Okay, so
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
yeah, I did. I signed up and I donated. Quickly get a picture.
Let's do it. You left it over there on that table.
Ready? Gotta get a little closer. Yeah, we go. 3, 2, 1. Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very nice to meet you. Have a good evening.
Okay. Where's your mommy? Take me to your mother.
Well, I'll be around. You're in the city.